Really looking forward to today, team. And thanks for everyone for being so punctual. Really appreciate that everyone's got really important things that they're doing and joining us here at 6:30 on a Wednesday night. We're really excited to kind of share this with you. Just a couple of housekeeping rules, team. So while we're doing all these weekly level ups and what that looks like, if we can we put as many cameras on as possible? So much nicer to talk to a face and connect with you that way. And any questions that pop up along the way, feel free to write them in the chat. It'll be so much easier to get back to you, and we'll answer as many as we can at the completion of today. So the whole concept behind the level up that we're trying to do is we've been thinking about doing it for quite a while. We're just really looking to connect with the community. And our whole concept is kind of how we would address personal training, which is if we are getting bite-sized piece regularly, gives us a really great way as people, as members, and people that are interested in health and wellness to learn something, whether it's weekly, whether it's fortnightly. And if we do that regularly, we'll find that we generally level up, hence the term, but become aware of a much broader ranges of health and wellness. So that's the concept. Feel free to email and message in things that genuinely matter to you so that we can create the content that will be relevant for you. We've got a whole bunch of and a range of things that we want to take you through, but nothing is better than hearing it from you so that we can help you along that journey. So let's kick things off. It's going to be short and punchy because I know that everyone's got lots to do on a Wednesday night. Today's topic is high protein and fat with a low carbohydrate brekkie. And I've been talking to a few people in the studio about this, and it's been a bit of a tough transition for a few people this week, and that's okay. I want everyone to know that. So who will get things from you today? If you have energy crashes in the morning, and if you're kind of about mid-morning feeling like you need a little coffee or a pick-me-up, or you get the occasional muffin from your local cafe, if you end up really hungry by lunchtime, or if you end up actually feeling like you're overindulge in the afternoon or the evening, or if you're actually just really struggling with, potentially putting on some muscle or dropping some body fat, if they're your goals, I'm hoping you take a lot away from today, because today we're going to solve those issues with the simple and most effective strategy that we have, which is prioritizing our breakfast. And people skip over this all the time. They think it's not that big a deal, but I'm here today to really try to debunk. We start there as the number one thing that we try to help educate people through with their nutrition journey. It's the biggest net impact you can make, which should be the simplest, which should give you 80% of the results. The whole thing is we want to start the day well. And something that I love to talk to people about is I like to think of 3 to 4 hours in front of my day. Will that person thank me for what I've done now? So right now it's 6:30. I'm really considering, will the 5:30 in the morning Sam thank me for what I'm about to do at night tonight, so that I'm hopefully can wake up feeling recharged. And that sits really well with me going forward. So when it comes to breakfast, what does 6:30, 7:30 a.m. you do that's going to either benefit you for the day or potentially make things a little bit harder? So number one thing we're trying to do in terms of macronutrients, we've chosen high protein, high fat, low carbohydrate. And I know that that's a difficult transition because most people, and I'm talking 90% of the people that come through the fifth element door, are having a high carbohydrate, low protein, low fat breakfast. And so what do we do about that? And why do we even care? And why is that important to you? It's really simple. When we do macronutrients with people, and we track and we log, we want 30% of somebody's nutrition to come from protein. So that doesn't mean meat, but it does mean protein. When we track and log, often I'll see 15%. And if someone's vegan or vegetarian, that'll be sub 10 a lot of the time. And that's really important. We need a large amount of protein. It has a whole bunch of net benefits, which we'll get into in a second. But inadvertently to that, it means that they eat a fairly large amount of carbohydrates. Now, if we're talking about a balanced diet, we want about 40% of your diet to come from carbohydrates. But most people are 15 and below on their protein, which means their carbohydrates creep up to 50, 60, somewhere between 60 and 80 is pretty common. And that's not even considering the quality of those carbohydrates. That's just including the macronutrient as a set standard. And there's a whole bunch of variety within that. Why is that important, and why do we care, and why do we start there? Well, simply put, it's going to help stabilize your blood sugar. And to be honest, if you could do one or two things, it would be three things: prioritize your sleep, prioritize your blood sugar, and reduce the amount of stress in your life. And a lot of the issues that you have in your health and wellness will subside drastically. So that is why we start with a high protein breakfast. Most people, let's take toast, cereal, oats, sort of the three favorites that everyone has, or porridge. People ingest a large amount of that, or fruit and granola. Not a lot of protein, lots of carbohydrates. And I don't want to demonize carbohydrates. They have a really great function for a lot of the things that we need for the body. But what happens is they then set us off with a huge dysregulation of your blood sugar. Comes up, comes down, and then bang, we get a crash somewhere around 10:30. What do we normally do at 10:30? It's coffee. It's what can I quickly get my hands on? What is another fast digesting carbohydrate source to get that little pick me up? That's what we're trying to avoid with the protein. So if you increase your protein and your fat intake at breakfast, you will mitigate that blood sugar curve. So it's not quite a roller coaster. What we're trying to do is slow down the digestion so that it's fuller for longer. That's what we're doing with the fats and the protein with that breakfast meal. So they're integral into slowing down how quickly or how high your blood sugar goes and how slow that curve is, so that you don't get the big crashes, which often just lead to poor food choices. And it's totally understandable when that craving hits and when that blood sugar crashes. No one ever tells me that they are looking for chicken and broccoli or something along those lines. It's always fast sugar sweets, and they're going to get us back out of that crash. The other thing is, it's about not playing catch up. Like we've discussed, most people undereat their protein by at least half. And unless you're getting around about a palm, that width, that round, 4 to 5 of those in a day, or if you're vegan and vegetarian, 5 big fistfuls or cupfuls of the equivalent protein source in your day, you're more than likely under eating your protein source for the day, which leads to a whole bunch of blood sugar disruptions, which leads to a whole bunch of energy crashes, which means your sleep probably won't be as great. And whatever whether it's productivity or body composition or performance, that'll be hindered quite significantly. The other thing it's going to do is life gets ahead of us. Happens all the time. Something comes in at work, you have to do a double shift. If you're working in the medical field, someone comes around to your house, it's like, great, you've already got a good amount of protein in the morning, which gives you a bit of flexibility into your day. It really just sets you up for success, so that when life happens, and it's gonna happen, we've made the controllables controllable and we've put our best foot forward for the rest of the day. They're the big takeaways around why we want to add in proteins and why we want to add in fats. So I want to harp on that, just that little bit of a point for a second. I want you to think of carbohydrates. Think of the gym. Think of Fifth Element. It's a busy Saturday morning. There's 150 people all working out. Carbohydrates ingested on their own, they're really easy to break down, and your body loves how quickly they can be absorbed, which is fantastic if we're athletes performing and running a marathon. Most of us are kind of doing what we're doing now. We're sitting at a desk for large portions of the day. Carbohydrates on their own, it's like the front roller doors open and everybody gets to run out all at once. All out onto the street, the gym exits really quickly. That is the carbohydrates going from your stomach into your intestines to be absorbed. When we have proteins and fats, the roller door comes down, and then by default, they take longer for the body to break them down. They're harder to break down. It sends different metabolic processes within your body to stay fuller for longer. And then 2 things happen. By default, your carbohydrates have to go single file out our front door rather than up the shutter door. So by default, it takes longer for everybody in the gym to get out the front. And it sets off a cascade of hormonal processes, which tells your body how to regulate the blood sugar better and tell your stomach not to empty as fast. So the net positive is more than threefold. which is incredible, which means instead of it going up, down, coffee crash, it's steady, slow release, you stay fuller for longer. So that's the concept behind having a high protein, high fat diet. We're trying to increase somebody's macros so they get all the net benefits of protein, which is your appetite will be much better off, your metabolism will be much higher, your cognition will improve because a lot of the processes in our body are protein derivatives, and you'll increase your lean body mass all at the same time. And then they're the big takeaways, and your fat will help slow that all down. I just want to see if there's anything coming in through the chat groups. That's okay. Someone's listening on the way home. Feel free to send them in, team. There's a couple of questions that did come through earlier today, and they're actually really important. So one of them was the high carbohydrate source breakfast, and that's there's two different ways we can go about it. Keep the carbohydrates. It's a difficult task to just reduce in cold turkey, but all we need to think of is like, what is the best protein and fat source I can add to that carbohydrate? If we can sort that out, that'll significantly decrease the blood sugar regulation or the roller coaster that's about to occur. The other one is, how much carbs can I have in the morning? The answer is, you want about a serving. Like, there's two different ways you can go about it. You can cut your carbohydrates altogether at breakfast. It's not going to impact your wider cognition, your energy levels, your macros for the day nearly as much as not having any protein at all. But I do recognize that it's a much tougher transition for a lot of people. So for many reasons. One, it's harder. It requires much more preparation. And there's just much more things, whether you're at home or out, that are quick, readily available, and carbohydrates. But you can go cold turkey, you can go high protein, high fat, and vegetables with some fiber, or just add in a protein source or a fat source to your carbohydrate source, and that'll decrease your blood sugar over time, which you'll get a net benefit from it, which is significant. That alone seems to solve about 60 to 80% of most people's health or wellness questions that we get early on at Fifth Element. Open floor to anybody. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like answering? I think I've just rambled for 5 minutes. Okay, I've got a few recipes that I want to, by the way, there's been some incredible recipes that I've seen throughout Revitalize 360. So really inspiring me to really up my chefing skills in the kitchen so that I can actually take some nice snaps for everybody. I've got a couple of ones. So a lot of people actually told me two things. This is what I really want people to take away when it comes to their breakfast. There's all those things that we just discussed about macros and proteins and fats and carbohydrates. But the other piece of the puzzle is, how are you going to fit that into your morning? Are you like me, and are you in a service-based role where you might only have a 15 to 30-minute breakfast window, which means potentially cooking something is not appropriate? In which case, I have a smoothie most mornings. It's quick, it's easy. I can easily put the right amount of protein, vegetables, fruit, fat sources in there, and it's easily digestible. Or do you have time to cook at home? But the people that set themselves up for success have that next thing. It's like, what is breakfast going to be, and how does that fit into my day? And you could do that for every meal of the day to set yourself up for success in the best possible way. What I like to personally do is I like to make, if I'm going to make an egg-based dish, I'll cook a frittata on the Sunday, make it in one dish, divvy it up into the portions that I'm going to have, and then I'm done for the week. I don't have time to cook in the morning, and I wouldn't want to preface that anyway. It's not something that I find enjoyable in my morning routine, even really on the weekends. For anybody that's vegan in the chat, really simply, a lot of the things that I like to do with the eggs is I like to just blend up some tofu, and it comes out almost exactly the same, and it's absolutely delicious. You can make an omelet with it. You can make a frittata with it. I see Jeffrey's on the call. We've been talking about making tofu-based chocolate mousses a lot in the last couple of weeks. Super versatile. You can use tempeh they work the same. And all you do is you make the exact same dish, minus obviously any of the meat proteins, and that'll work a treat. The other one I've been really doing a lot of is a green bowl. Throw in anything you want. Kale, spinach, asparagus, broccolini. I'll poach an egg in there. I'll put in some shavings of nuts through that, and then that works a treat. Probably my favorite one that I've been doing lately, and mainly for the vegans in the chat, is instead of like an overnight oat-based dish, I've been doing a overnight chai and almond milk infused quinoa dish with like a little bit of cinnamon and some shaved nuts over the top, which you can also add in any form of like tempeh based or yogurt or soy based yogurt into that in the morning, and it works an absolute treat. So that's my little focus for everybody that's on the chat today. Is really simple. Think about the dish that you're going to use for breakfast this week, if it's just one. Then I want you to think about, how does it fit into my morning? And is that something that I can replicate and that's going to set me up for success for that day? And then the third one is, as you're having breakfast for the rest of the week, I want you to think, in 2 to 3 hours, have a little log, a mental log of, how have I felt over the last couple of hours? Was I full of energy? Was I beaming? Did I not even think of food? Or I was starving the whole time? Or I had a really big up and now I'm completely crashed and bottomed out, and I'm just looking around for something to quickly get my hands on. And those little small check-ins are imperative, because it allows you to get solutions to build out some framework for whatever it is that you need in your nutrition. And that's really important. The more we do that and the more we check in, the more we can then come up with tools to our tool belt, and the better you'll feel in the long term. But with everything I've said today, the fact that you're trying and the fact that you're actually putting a conscious effort into making food choices that are going to benefit your health is honestly the biggest win that I don't think people put enough preface into. They're constantly figuring out what's right and wrong and what they could improve, but the trying is incredible. And I talk to a lot of people in the studio about this. We don't celebrate our wins enough. So I really love to celebrate everyone for coming on the call today. I really love just sharing some small insights into what we do in our community. We're going to have plenty of these going forward. Next week's going to be talking about why it's so hard to switch off from the stresses in our life. We'll tap into some nervous system stimulation and a few things that are kind of feeding that cycle of having a really dominant sympathetic nervous system. And we'll kind of attach that to the cascade in the body and how that kind of affects things like our blood sugar, our performance, our body composition, and a whole bunch of the things that people come down to fifth element for. If there's nothing else, guys, I don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. I want to really appreciate you for coming down, and thank you very much for spending Wednesday evening with me. Hopefully we'll see you all on the call next week. Have a lovely evening.